Chair now calls C.J. Grisham. We have you registered as C.J. Grisham, representing yourself in Open Carry, Texas, testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
I'll just echo what's already been said. Additionally, C.J. Grisham, president and founder of Open Carry, Texas, testifying in opposition of HB 533. So in addition to what's already been brought up, our main issue is really what's being added in here, or found in plain sight and readily accessible to the person. Literally anybody that is carrying a firearm, even if it's holstered on their side, would fall under this if a police officer wanted to, because the gun's in plain sight. It's readily accessible. What does that mean? And so what this does is it allows, or at least opens up people who are not even potentially related or involved with the individual having the mental breakdown from having their gun seized. And for that reason, we oppose this bill.
Questions, members? Thank you, sir. Chair now calls Michelle Mostert. Chair now calls C.J. Grisham. We have you registered as C.J. Grisham, representing yourself in Open Carry, Texas, against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. C.J. Grisham, representing Open Carry, Texas. Apparently, I need to start getting here before Tara Mecha, and in the interest of saving y'all's time, I'm just going to adopt her testimony. Thank you.
All right. Members, any questions?
Chair now calls C.J. Grisham. Have you registered as C.J. Grisham of Open Carry, Texas, and on behalf of yourself, and you are against the bill? Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Yeah, my name is C.J. Grisham. I represent Open Carry, Texas. We are against House Bill 106. Quite frankly, it's none of your business. It's none of your business how many guns I own. It's none of the police's business how many guns I buy. It's no one's business. Whether I buy 1, whether I buy 4, whether I buy 10. It's just none of your business. The federal government already tracks multiple firearm purchases, whether it's a rifle or a pistol. Not just pistols, rifles, or pistols. So this has already been done, and some would say, well, hey, this has already been done at the federal government. Why should you care it's happening in Texas? Well, I care it's happening at the federal government too, because it's none of their business either. It is no one's business how many guns I buy for lawful purposes. Period, point blank. I oppose this bill. Open Carry, Texas opposes this bill. Let it die a noble death.
Representative Goodwin, you have a connect the dots question again? No? Okay. Okay. I know. Chairman Hollis.
Thank you. So what would you say to the families of Uvalde when you say it's nobody's business who buys and how many guns people buy?
We're not talking about buying guns. We're talking about what they use those guns for. So it's nobody's business who buys a gun. What it's their business for is what those guns are used for.
So you don't think that nobody should have known about an 18-year-old buying 2 guns?
A legal purchase is a legal purchase. Nobody knows what anyone's going to use a gun for. What's the point of this? Because this bill, it sends this information to law enforcement. It doesn't tell them what they're supposed to do with it. What are they supposed to do with it? And then and what good does it do reporting this information after the fact, going back and finding out? I mean, they murdered people. That person murdered those children at that school. How did knowing how many guns he had change the fact that people were murdered? The murder already happened. So going back and just saying, oh, well, hey, we already knew you bought 2 guns, 3 guns, 4 guns. That's not the problem. The problem is the murder.
Well, I understand that, but there was also an indication that he had made some posts before or prior. And my question to you is, if law enforcement would have known he had bought those 2 guns, maybe they could have stopped him before so many people's lives were affected.
So it sounds like a failure of law enforcement not knowing how many guns he bought.
Well, exactly. Isn't that what this bill does? Oh, my. I'm just asking.
I can't believe people think it's funny that murder is something to laugh about.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I met some of the families from Uvalde.
As have I.
And I have a picture of one of the young boys in my office still. I look at it every day when I turn my computer on. And I am a gun lover. And I don't think anything's funny about it at all.
Thank you. I don't either, sir.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Thank you.
Chair now calls C.J. Grisham. We have you registered as C.J. Grisham, representing yourself in Open Carry, Texas, in favor of the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Please continue.
CJ Grisham, President, Founder of Open Carry Texas, in favor of this bill. Just to reiterate, I just looked up last year's, because I want to make sure I had the right number, from DPS. Every year, DPS publishes a concealed license report, and the conviction rate for a license holder is 0.49%, which is actually down from the year prior, which was 0.61%. The issue with trying to, there was testimony about 6,000 licenses being suspended or revoked. It's a very convenient way to add those two numbers to make a point, because what happens is when someone is just accused of a Class B misdemeanor or higher, it doesn't matter if that Class B misdemeanor is failing to vaccinate your pet or littering more than 5 pounds. If you are arrested and accused of a Class B misdemeanor, your license is suspended. So you have to subtract. I personally have had my license suspended 4 times because I've been falsely arrested 4 times. And then those charges are dropped and I get my license back. So this idea that there's 6,000 out there is a highly inflated number because it doesn't count convictions, which is only 0.49%, according to DPS's own numbers that are right here in front of me. And with that, we support this bill. License holders are incredibly responsible, and that's across the board, not just in Texas.
Any questions, members? Thank you, sir. Chair now calls C.J. Grisham. We have you registered as C.J. Grisham, representing yourself in Open Carry, Texas, against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Again, C.J. Grisham, President, Founder of Open Carry, Texas, represent Open Carry in Texas in opposition to this bill. I want to start by saying that nobody on either side of this bill, nobody, whether you're for it or against it, wants more dead kids. Nobody. Anybody that thinks that everybody that comes up here and testifies for or against this bill, anybody that thinks they don't care about their kids are being intellectually dishonest or outright just lying to themselves. Everyone cares about this bill. I am glad that Representative King brought this bill, even though I oppose it, because he's trying to do something. We just don't think it's going to do anything. And the reason for that is you read the bill itself, and it's banning guns from 21 years of age, semi-automatic rifle that is capable of accepting a detachable magazine. An M1 Garand, and I'm a combat veteran, I've seen more death and destruction and human decomposition than probably anybody in this room. I've seen it. I've experienced it. It was right in front of me. I've had the blood on my hands. The brain matter. I know what guns do. I know what destruction looks like. I know what it's like to lose somebody very close to you. But an M1 Garand doesn't have a detachable magazine. Its round is 3 times larger than an AR-15 round. But this bill doesn't accept that. I could give that to a 18 to 20-year-old. So I do thank Representative King for bringing this, because at least we're having this conversation, which is important. 62% of gun murders are handguns. Only 4.4% are with rifles. An NIH study found that between 2 to 12% of all guns used in general criminal activity, criminal use of assault weapons and high-capacity semi-automatic firearms, were with rifles. The FBI and the CDC, 3.2%. are with rifles. So even if we just banned all rifles, not just this bill, you're solving between 2 and 7% of the problem. The problem is not the gun.
Members, any questions? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Chair now calls C.J. Grisham. We have you registered as C.J. Grisham, representing yourself and Open Carry, Texas, against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. C.J. Grisham here for Open Carry Texas, and on behalf of myself, In opposition to this bill, I would like to correct one thing that I've heard actually several times, including from Chairman Moody, that the federal government does not collect multiple weapons or rifles, does not collect this information, and we're trying to plug in that hole because they don't do this for rifles. Since 2011, that has not been the case. If you go to the ATF website, it clearly states on their own website, sale of rifles in 2011, they did, and I've got the emergency, it was a 60-day emergency rule that they created because of the flow of guns into the United States that the ATF was trafficking from Mexico. It says the ATF was authorized to enforce multiple firearm sales for certain types of rifles from FFLs in Arizona, California, New Mexico, and Texas. FFLs in these states must report the following types of rifles: semi-automatic rifles, rifles with caliber greater than .22 caliber, including .223 and .556, the common AR-15, and rifles with the ability to accept detachable magazines. So it is not accurate that the federal government is not doing this, or that they're just doing it only for handguns. They're doing it for both. The other thing is this, we can say all day long this doesn't create a registry. What do you call it when you're dictating a form that identifies dates, locations, sales, transfers, the firearms or detachable magazines sold and transferred, the identity of the retailer and the buyer, and including a copy of the identification provided by the buyer or transferee? We could say it's not a registration or a registry, but when you're putting my name in some list somewhere or on some form that's going to be collected in some drawer, it's a registry. We oppose this bill.
Chair Moody.
The ATF collects the information. The state doesn't. The local sheriff is not getting this information on these types of weapons. That is the gap the bill addresses.
And the ATF is required, when they do these multiple weapon sales for handguns and rifles,
Right.
to report to the senior law enforcement officer of that district.
Okay, no, sir. Handguns, yes. Rifles, no. That's the gap the bill is covering. So I appreciate you laying out the different entities, and you're right. And I said in my layout, ATF is the repository for that now. The disconnect is the local law enforcement is not getting the information about the multiple rifle sales. That's the disconnect we're trying to fill in. Just for handguns is what's being done now. And you want to work with me on whatever language on registry, this is going to be destroyed, it's confidential, however you want to put it. It's in the language of the substitute, which I don't know if you saw yet. I mean, it says cannot be kept for any of those purposes. And so I get the concern, I get it. I don't think it's logical, but it's a concern I'm going to continue to hear. So I might as well try to address it. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to support law enforcement with information. This prohibits no one from doing what they want to do. They can buy 100 of these. It doesn't prohibit them at all. It is just information being provided to our most trusted law enforcement folks on the ground that know their community. It is mind-boggling to me that we are against information flow to law enforcement. That's what we've come down to.
Government has no business knowing how many guns I own. I'll revert back to that.
Members, any other?
Or buy, excuse me.
Any other questions, members? Thank you, sir. Chair now calls C.J. Grisham. We have you down as C.J. Grisham, representing yourself in Open Carry, Texas, against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Please proceed.
C.J. Grisham, President, founder of Open Carry, Texas, speaking out in opposition to House Bill 236. Although, if this bill does pass, it's going to be awesome seeing the lines of gangs and drug dealers and felons lining up to get those FFLs done, because we know that's what's going to happen once this passes, if it ever passes. All those people are definitely going to get in line. So that nonsense aside, I'm going to adopt what's been already said, but I want to give just one personal story. I live on my family farm, and my sister lives up in Amarillo. My dad lives down in San Antonio. My mom lives in Memphis. So I live with my cousins, I live with my uncles, and grandparents. My grandfather can't give me a gun under this bill. My uncle can't give me a gun under this bill because neither of them are within the the first degree of consanguinity. I couldn't, my dad, who is an extensive gun collector, taught me guns at an early age, cannot give guns to my children because that's 2 degrees. That's the second degree of consanguinity. So, I mean, in addition to all the other issues, you know, this idea that only a father and son, or a father, daughter, or mother, son, whatever, that those are the only people we can trust to give a gun to. When I know I live with my cousins, know them very well. I've got neighbors that have been neighbors for 30, 40 years, and I can't sell or get a gun from a neighbor under this bill. This is just a way to universal background checks, unconstitutional, and please oppose this bill.
Questions, members? Thank you. Chair now calls C.J. Grisham. C.J. Grisham representing self, Open Carry, Texas, against the bill.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct?
And yes, sir. And this is a new record for Open Carry, Texas, by 13 minutes that the bills I've testified for. Waiting periods were once a part of federal law mandated by the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act of 1993, but only until the NICS came online in 1998. The law did not in any way reduce gun violence or suicide in the 5 years it was in place. There's not sufficient history as required by the Bruin decision of 3-day gun purchase waiting periods. Instead, Congress provided for instant background checks to protect a citizen's Second Amendment right from undue delay while ensuring one is not prohibited by law from gun ownership. A recent study by a trio of authors from the Harvard Business School claims to have found that waiting periods reduce gun deaths by 17%. That might be the 16% that I heard earlier. I can't remember, but the study I read said 17%. Their model fails, however, to incorporate controls for educational attainment, crime rates, police resources, and incarceration rates. Controls used by virtually every other researcher studying firearms-related policy effects. The study did find that waiting periods reduce all homicides and suicides, as well as specifically firearms-related suicides, but also found that background checks increase homicides. So this is that same study that didn't use the proper controls. The authors also found that poverty decreased firearms-related homicides, and that poverty, urban areas, and younger age cohorts were not associated with total homicides. The model is obviously misspecified, but the finding has been run across popular media with no mention to the effect of background checks. Waiting periods are, David Koppel, research director for the Independent Institute, recently stated, if handgun waiting periods reduced gun homicide by 17% as claimed, it would necessarily be true that in states without waiting periods, 17% of gun homicides would be perpetrated within the day of getting purchased. Indeed, there's no such data to unambiguously ground truth in these claims. The National Handgun time to crime data from the BATF is approximately 9 years. In Uvalde, the case was 7 months. These are arbitrary positions. I would, however, this was the bill I didn't get to testify on, so that was it. So we just urge you to go against the bill.
Questions, members?
I had 2 things there.
Thank you.
Thank you.